The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Thomas Sanherho. Hi, Thomas.
Hi, Dom. How's it going?
Very well, thank you. And Father Andrew Kinstetter. Hi, Father Andrew.
Hello again.
Yeah, welcome back. Your second time joining us as a regular participant, and we're having a lot of fun here. And we're looking forward to our topics tonight, which we'll jump right into. Why not do that? Our first topic is, I call it the recommendation bubble, and what this is, and I think it's something we've all encountered by now, and it's been around for a while, but it's sort of bubbled up to the surface, no pun intended, so bubbled up to the surface again for me recently. I've been using the website Quora, Quora.com, Quora.com. It's a question and answer website where people post questions about random things, or sometimes I think Quora gets people to post rather banal questions sometimes. That's a whole nother topic. But and then they ask people to answer them, and users will say, "Oh, I'm a expert in these areas, and so ask me questions about these things." And I liked it. I'll answer a lot of questions from a Catholic point of view, and also from doing some tech stuff. I answer some tech questions where I have the ability to. I answer a lot of Catholic questions, which is kind of fun, and I like to read it too. And I've got some interest areas. I have wide-ranging interests. I read about. I like airplanes. I like sci-fi. Certain books and things. But there's so many different things, and once in a while I'll click on a random question, is like, wow, that's an odd question, or I'm kind of curious how someone would answer that. And that's where the problem begins, which is Quora punishes you for your curiosity. And Quora's not alone in this, and I will talk about other ones who do this too, but the algorithm is set that, oh, you're interested in this? Oh, let me show you more of that, and a lot more of that, and keep showing this to you. And oh, you didn't realize I was showing you more of this, and you kept clicking on these, and now my feed is entirely none of the things I actually want to read about, but all this other stuff. Like, I was just curious. I'm not. So, does this sound familiar to you guys on this? Have you experienced this in Quora or elsewhere?
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things. It's one of those hazards of the algorithms taking over and trying to kind of predict where we want to go next. And I liken it to the overexcited puppy dog, where suddenly you got this new toy that you're playing with them, and now, I'm gonna go get that one. I'm gonna go get that toy. I'm gonna go bring that toy back, and it just won't stop, It's
right.
Like, come on.
Right.
Let's go back to the way things were.
I gather they're trying to make the site more attractive to us so that we don't have to constantly go hunt down things. It's not like an encyclopedia where you have to constantly, is there something new that I'm interested in? Let me, page through the categories and dig down. No, it's supposed to bubble it up for you and make it more attractive and sticky. It's kind of a problem because I appreciate you trying to give me stuff I'm interested in, but you're doing it badly.
I feel like it's sort of a Pandora's box almost, that I've noticed it. I've actually not had a whole lot of experience with Quora at all, but I've seen it more often in my Facebook feed, where I'm a fan of Marvel and DC and these sorts of things, but recently I actually had to just kind of mute one of the suggestions that it kept popping up with, because it was one of the actors involved in those worlds, and it was sort of his personal page and promoting kind of his boyfriend LGBTQ kind of stuff. And I was just like, I like the shows, I like, the comic book heroes and all of that, but I don't really want the stuff that it's thinking that I want to see more of. And so like with Pandora's box, there's an element of good in there, but there's also a lot of just potentially hazardous stuff that is out there. And especially if you're if you're not careful, or if you're uninformed, or if you're, a young person who's just kind of, stepping out into this larger world, it can be quite dangerous.
Yeah, I had a similar issue with like Apple News, especially when it first started, where it does this recommendation engine thing, and I was constantly being bombarded with like, oh, you're interested in sci-fi? Here's entertainment gossip news. I'm like, I don't care. Where's the button to say I don't care? Don't ever show me this ever again. Never mind, you have these big news sites like CNN or Fox or MSNBC. All of them do it, where if you install their app on your phone and you allow them to send you breaking news, I'm sorry, breaking news is not someone dating someone.
To be fair, it's not entirely the algorithm's fault,
right?
Because the algorithm is just picking up on those meta tag cues that are being baked in everything. And I think there are some overzealous people that are like, oh, well, we can get everybody if we just tag this sci-fi, and if we tag it, news, and if we tag it, and they just add like every tag they can, and then they get splatted on everything. And the algorithms, really the big battle on the back end is to try and fight against that over tagging mentality. And Google's done a little bit where they've started penalizing people in their search returns based on the number of tags that they put in. So if they put in too much metadata, then Google's like, no, that's a little too much. It's not specific enough for us. It's going to move you down in the search results.
Sort of like those Instagram posts with 700 hashtags.
Exactly. Yeah, that would be immediately like, okay, it's a red flag. This person's trying to hit everyone, and maybe that's not such a great idea. It's a constant struggle though, because as a person who writes for this kind of stuff, you have to account for everything, and it's really hard to account for all humans.
Right.
You can pick groups, but then when you try and account for everybody, it gets really, really difficult, because you have to start thinking on this really cerebral high level, and it's not easy to do.
And the fact is also there's another uncomfortable fact, which is the reason it's showing these things to people is because people are consuming it. I mean, right. I click on something out of curiosity, idle curiosity, that the headline is well crafted enough to grab my attention or whatever. But other people are clicking on it, and so that's a fact, is that there are people who want this content, even if I don't. And then there are other kinds of recommendation engines that we encounter all the time too. So, and the two that I want to pick on, because they're for similar things, which is YouTube and Netflix, and they do it slightly differently from each other. YouTube relies on related content, whereas Netflix relies on more of this algorithm, this discovery algorithm. So, for example, with YouTube, once you're done watching a video, it offers other videos like this one you've just watched, which can be good if the content is good, but is very bad if the related content is just clickbait, thinly disguised with the right, tagging and that sort of thing. While Netflix, it tries to learn what you like based on what you've watched and some other stuff that they try to keep secret in their algorithm, but which a lot of people think has to do with because they have such large amounts of data about what people watch, they could say, all right, you have watched these 100 things. Well, other people who have watched these 100 things also like this. And then they recommend stuff to you based on that. I found it to be okay with that. With the YouTube's related content, that's actually been better, because I watched a video about Star Trek. I want to presumably I'll be interested in another video by someone else about Star Trek. Whereas with the YouTube thing, sometimes I just look at it, why are you recommending this bizarre show to me? Because other people who apparently have the same taste as I do also like some bizarre show or something like that.
Right. Well, or like where you're looking for a show, and it's really hard to navigate Netflix via search sometimes, because you're getting returns based on that algorithm still. And you're like, somebody recommended something to you that you trust, and you're going to look for it. And it's like, I don't know where this show is. I can't find it anywhere. And they're like, no, it should be right on the top of your thing. But Netflix is totally different for them than it is for you.
The interface is fairly It's pretty bad. The Netflix interface is pretty bad. I won't even get into the whole auto playing trailer thing, which is
Oh gosh, yeah.
a hassle. Father Andrew, do you have a take on this the YouTube style versus the Netflix and the others do it? Hulu and Amazon do it too. Although I think Amazon a little less to that extent. On where that lands for you.
Well, so there, I guess, first of all, I think when it comes to Netflix and YouTube, I was kind of thinking about this earlier, that I watch content on them in the same way that I shop. That I'm very, maybe stereotypically male in that I go there, I watch the one thing, and then I leave.
Right.
In the same way that I go to the grocery store and I'm not just kind of browsing through every aisle. So I typically don't pay attention as much to the recommended videos or the other things. And I mentioned last week that I don't actually have a Netflix account, so I can't quite speak into that. But what it reminded me of was also just in general Amazon.com, like the recommended, like people with this in your cart, people with similar things also were interested in these things. And at least from an Amazon perspective on my end, I found that helpful because often, like if I'm going to get a couple books, I'm like, oh yeah, there was that third book that Amazon is already recommending to me that I forgot about that I do want because I'm interested in these other two. And so I guess even when it comes to video and media consumption, I don't necessarily mind that at all. I'm definitely skeptical or nervous about where it could lead. So the YouTube things and being a sci-fi fan, we all know how that can lead down some pretty weird places.
Yes.
Which is why I tend to take YouTube as I'm a one and done kind of thing. And I go back to what I'm doing. So yeah, I appreciate the idea, but I'm not entirely sure how it should be implemented beyond what it is, I guess.
There might be a generational element to this too, because as I'm older than both of you guys, and I'm from the generation of sit on the couch with the clicker. Actually, I'm even older. I was the clicker for my older brother at one point, where he would go change the channel. But now, of the generation where you sit down the cable box in the clicker and you surf the channels and just to see what's on. And I think that is a behavior that is more prevalent among a slightly older generation. I know that there are plenty of young people who sit on YouTube all day and just watch video after video. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but I think there might be a bit of a generational thing. And one of the things that comes up too, though, is I've discovered for my priest friends is a little different from people like me, or maybe like even Thomas. Whereas where I've got my wife is on the account and my kids. Oh my gosh, my recommendations end up weird.
My wife and the comedy specials. There's comedy specials on Netflix, and I'm just like, why? I know.
Exactly.
I don't want to watch the comedy specials. Come on, man.
Right? Yeah, I've got a comedy special. What I get is I get like British Regency style TV shows, Dora the Explorer, and Aliens or something. And I'm like, this is. I'm in a file somewhere now. Somebody's got a file on me. Like this guy is weird. We need to watch this guy.
So confused. Like the algorithm can't possibly pick what I like because there's no consistency there.
Right.
It's funny, Dom. I think that you made a good point with the generational thing, because I often, if I go home, my dad is the one who wants to just sit and channel surf, and it's always in my entire life driven me nuts that he'll go to a channel and start watching something, and when the commercials come on, he immediately is looking for something else. And I am so terrified that we're going to miss the come back to the original show that it just drove me nuts. So I think perhaps you're right in that's at least for me and my generation. I just want to watch the show and DVR it or iTunes, buy it, and just kind of watch it and be all self-contained.
My brother was the guy who would switch the commercial come on, he'd start surfing and stop somewhere until the commercial came on there, then go back, and now we've missed part of the show.
You're missing major plot points.
I had a tough childhood. Let me just tell you.
I want to know what they did with that wall that they're going to tear down and the drama behind the budget and everything.
Exactly. And this is the days when we didn't have DVRs. It airs once and then you'll watch it maybe in the summer on the rerun, and that's it. Oh man. I'm working on my issues here.
It's kind of nice now because my parents finally have high enough speed internet that they have the DVR and they can pause things, and Dad and I can like pause the show and like talk about whatever we needed to talk about, and then start the show again, and then we can forward through all the commercials that we otherwise would have had to sat through and watched.
So one of the things I wanted to kind of talk about is how do we break out of this recommendation bubble? Is this something we can fix ourselves, or is this something we need the tech companies to fix, to come up with better recommendation tools, to better AI, or machine learning is the word of the day now. We don't call it AI because we're afraid that our Facebook feed will rise up and kill us with robots.
It's totally different things, though. It really is.
I know.
It's totally different things. I like the precision in language there, too, personally. But I think, of course, it comes down to a lot of issues. There's a lot of issues that are wrapped up in this. First off, you have how do we categorize things that we like? And this is a big struggle in a lot of the communities that I'm involved in, especially right now with a lot of the political talk that's going on in them. Just to give an example from the tabletop gaming community, there is a lot of talk right now about inclusivity, and it's good talk. It's good talk about who we invite to the table and how we invite them to the table and who has a say in what the game is like. But it's also a lot of talk about that, and it can sometimes stray from the talk about the game to just the talk about the politics. And it's hard to break those categories, because as soon as you say, well, we're not going to talk about that because we're talking about the game, you've suddenly, gone away from that idea of inclusivity again. You're saying, well, shut up. We need to just talk about the game. That's not what we're talking about right now. And that's just as dangerous as not allowing the flow of that talk to happen. So there's the categorization issue. And then there's also like how do you naturally bubble things up and not then say, well, you might be interested in these other categories that are just like that. So yeah, I don't know that the solution lies. I don't know if it lies on our side or on the tech side, but we've got to start really thinking about the way we're even thinking about this too.
Father Andrew, what do you think? Is this a combination? Is it something, behaviors that we have to change? Are we going to be forced out of the habit of idly clicking on things and be more disciplined about our surfing? Is that this part of the solution until the tech gets better?
Well, so you're making an interesting point. I would be very skeptical to want to rely on tech companies to do this for us, because that initially just kind of helps us be way more passive in our lives and in general. And then I think of things like Facebook kind of curating the news for us. I don't want someone else to be in charge of what content comes my way. But I think you're striking at a potentially a deeper issue here, is that just as a human person, we want to grow in virtue and to be able to discern right and wrong and all of those sorts of things. We have to take responsibility for ourselves. And so I would rather see this on our end of things, where I'm looking at these things from a critical eye and discerning between them what's good, what's not good, what I should be doing, what I shouldn't be doing, rather than just, again, kind of passively receiving the content that supposedly some artificial intelligence has determined that this is what I need. Because, again, one is very passive and not taking control of your own life. The other one is that I'm actually growing as a person. I'm growing in my knowledge. I'm growing in virtue as I'm discerning what's good and what's not good in these kind of situations. So I would rather see that fall completely. Well, I don't want to say I wouldn't want to see tech take some role in it, but I think the responsibility has to be with the individual.
That's a good point. In fact, with so much of the way we use the various tools we can't just keep saying, no, Facebook, you've got to fix yourself and be better and less interesting. That keeps to keep us, addicted to you. The companies themselves have a goal, which is stickiness. They want us to stay there. They want us to keep surfing. That's why the Twitter is implementing the curated feed, and why Facebook has the curated feed, because their aim is to keep us stay there, so we keep seeing the ads and we don't go off and read a book or something, or spend time with our family. and it's not random. They have, not only do they have very good machine learning, they have very good psychologists who know the human psyche. And we've talked about this recently with the Fortnite addiction that for young men especially are experiencing. And I wouldn't be surprised if Netflix has a team of industrial psychologists on their staff, and Facebook and all of these other companies helping come up with these algorithms. And so it does behoove us. Yeah, I think you're right. We've got to become more disciplined in our own selves, when to put it down, when to turn it off, so that we can have a better life and we're not stuck in the loop.
I think we also have to be aware of the fact that our profile is there. These companies are profiling us. They are taking this information and they're doing things with it. And I think we get in the trap of thinking about ourselves being anonymous online and like, oh, well, I'll just look at this thing because it's not really, it's not showing up anywhere. My name's not attached to it, but your name's attached to it. It doesn't matter whether you think it is or not. That IP address is being recorded. All of the information about it is being logged. And unless you are incredibly paranoid, you are attached to that piece of information some way or another.
So I want to move on to our second segment, by the way, because it's a little bit related about something addictive, which is I want to talk a little bit about the evolution of gaming, but I want to start by acknowledging this significant anniversary that Father Andrew brought to my attention, which is that the Nintendo Game Boy has reached 30 years of age. It is 30 years that Nintendo Game Boy has been out. I have to say, the Game Boy was never really part of my life. It was 30 years ago. I was in college, and so it just came at the wrong time for me to get into it. So I have had other games, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about video gaming that we've all experienced, and mine's going to be a little different from yours, I know, because I come from Stone Eyes and Bearskins era in computing, but and then we could talk about where we are today and where we're going to in the future that we think. But my gaming starts with, I literally played Pong on a neighbor's television, black and white TV, the whole bloop bloop bloop, and thought it was the most amazing thing. And I remember ColecoVision and Atari, and bugging my parents incessantly to get one, and never did.
Oh man.
Yeah, most of my early video gaming was, in fact, Apple II. I had a Apple IIc. We had an Apple IIe first, then we got a 2C, and then I had a 2GS later. I was an Apple II fanboy. I really was, and there were a lot of fun games, Choplifter and Qbert, and some of those. Which when you can find some of these online now, like in the Internet Archive, and play them again, and it's a trip back in time. But what about you guys? What was your video gaming like? Were you Game Boy owners as a kid? Father Andrew, I'm gonna guess, since you sent me the link, that you were a Game Boy kid.
Yeah, absolutely. Like some of my earliest memories that I have, I was below 6 years of age, because we had the Game Boy before we moved out to the ranch when I was 6. But I remember specifically my dad playing Tetris on that Game Boy. And one just random thing that always sticks out in my mind is that as a family, Dad made us all give up the Game Boy for Lent. And even he, in the middle of Lent, broke down and let us all play it, because that was right when the link cable was released, and you could connect 2 Game Boys and play Tetris against each other. And like for one day throughout that entire Lent, we got to play Tetris against each other. So yeah, the Game Boy and Nintendo have been huge in my family. My older brother and I bought together a friend's Super Nintendo, and that became kind of a staple thing in our household. Another thing that was interesting as I was thinking about that point in my life was games were used to help teach as well. So in school, I remember playing Oregon Trail on the school computers.
You died of dysentery.
Right. And I would shoot all the buffalo and get way too much food and not be able to take it all in. But even like we used Mario Teaches Typing to learn how to type.
Right.
And Troggle Trouble Math to learn math and word problems and those sorts of things. And I absolutely love those. In fact, I still I have it on I have a Windows 95 computer that still works.
Wow.
and can play some of these old games on, which is just really fun for me. But yeah, definitely in my family, Nintendo has been big. Now my dad actually will continue to play Mario Kart Double Dash on the GameCube with us.
Awesome.
So even when I go home, even to this day, we will hook up the Nintendo Wii and we have Mario Kart on it. And me and my brother and my dad and my younger brother will all kind of get together and play. And it's one of the few games that my dad will play with us, which is awesome. Because rather than being an isolation sort of thing, it's something that has always brought my family together. And, we just have a lot of fun with it and completely try to run each other off the road and have a lot of fun. And then the other one in recent years has been the Xbox. And I've been a big player of Halo. And me and my older brother, even now, will connect over Xbox Live because he's up at home, which is a good 4 hours drive north of me. And so about every 2 or 3 weeks, we'll get together and just kind of play that online. And it ends up being less about the game and more about just our interaction. But we love the game too, so it's fun. So, and then I mentioned this actually in an email, I think, Dom, the other week, is I'm big into the Pokemon Go on the iPhone. So I'm big into that community as well, and I play that quite a bit here in Cheyenne, and that tends to be a lot of fun as well. I'm a big gamer, if you couldn't already tell.
And Pokemon Go is that you mentioned that email, how it helps you connect with people as a priest playing Pokemon Go. People see you playing, and it gives you these interactions with people you might not otherwise. They're not going to darken the door of a church necessarily, so they get to see you in a normal situation.
And I've actually had people like come to the front of the church and talk to me who aren't religious or aren't Catholic, and yeah, they get to see this face of a priest who I'm completely geeking out about this game with them, and they're not scared to even approach the church. In fact, I have a number of them who'll message me on Facebook because there's one of those virtual gyms right outside of the church, and so they'll communicate with me and yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. But even like I mentioned in the email, there's parishioners that are out playing it too. So a lot of them are like, oh my gosh, he plays Pokemon Go, and I had one kid at the youth group the other day, like walk out of the office and kind of pop his head back in and say, I saw you playing Pokemon Go the other day, and then walk out. And like, that was all he said. And it was just,
they just want you to know they're keeping an eye on you,
Right. But it's beautiful because it makes me approachable and relatable. And I've had some very in-depth conversations with some of them about religion and Catholicism, and particularly from those who aren't religious hardly at all. In fact, I had a very, very deep kind of conversation about just the morality of sexuality with this couple, and they're not religious hardly at all. And I was able to say, well, this is our belief and why we believe it, and yeah, it was really interesting just getting into that whole discussion on procreative and unitive aspects of the marital act and why we believe it is what it is and how God created it, and
all because you played Pokemon Go.
Right, yeah. And whether or not, I see the fruit of the seed that maybe I'm planting, I have no idea, but I'm having a lot of fun. They're having a lot of fun. We're having great conversations, and maybe, God and the Holy Spirit are moving hearts through the midst of this, which is pretty darn awesome.
Wow. Thomas, how about you? Your gaming experience, were you a gamer?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it sounds like I fit right in between the two of you, where I remember having an Atari, and but it was very, very early on, and so we were early adopters of Nintendo at my house, and played Nintendo pretty regularly throughout. But I had a different experience in my family. I was the only real gamer. My family all had, they would play from time to time. My brother was big into sport games, and I never was, but I was into the RPGs and all of the mainline games that Nintendo would put out. So I've had every Nintendo console up until the Switch. I haven't gotten a Switch yet, but I don't doubt that it's coming.
It's totally worth it. Get one.
Yeah. I've been told that from several people too, so we'll have to. My kids have have broken discs from playing them so much. So, Breath of the Wild, we're like hanging right now because we have not finished the game, but the disc was broken because it had been taken out and put back in so many times. That's I remember having the original Game Boy, and that thing was a tank. And I don't doubt, I had a student actually bring me one the other day, the gray case, and they were like, "This thing still works, Mr. S." And I was like, yeah, no, I know it probably does. And we turned it on, and yep, it made all the sounds, and it played. And this thing's 30 years old, and it's still working just as well as it did the day that they took it out of the box. So, and I have one of the games. I have a cartridge still that I play on any Game Boy system that I get. They still make them backwards compatible. So playing them on those. And my big interest is in the I did move into a little while for the MMO games, the massively multiplayer online games. And I found that they were too time consuming for me. So I backed off, and just as a father with as many kids as I have, I can't invest the time I want to in those games. But when I was in college, I was a guild leader for one of them. It was a game called Shadowbane. And I remember sitting on that game, and it became so much about the connection with people that I wouldn't play. I would just sit on the game and like manage stuff that was going on. And so it was almost like a desk job where I would just sit there and type messages back and forth to people, organize everything that was going on, and then they would go do a raid, and I'd be like, well, I organized that, but I didn't really get to go on that raid. What's going on here? I think that's the nature of those kind of games, is you get to know people and you connect with them in a very different way. And like you were saying, Father, it's the conversations come up naturally when you mention something about yourself personal, and especially when it's about religion. Those conversations come up in the private messages or just on the group boards or on the forum. And it's a great moment to be able to step out and, really embrace your faith and say, this is what I believe and why I believe it. And just leave it at that. You don't have to berate them for anything that they're doing. All they want to know is what you actually think, because for them, looking at us from the outside, we can be the anomaly. We can be the weird ones. And just to explain it simply and straightforward, in my understanding, is probably the best thing you can do.
Well, and it helps, first of all, you already have those established relationships. And so there's already a dialogue of trust happening.
Right.
And then the other thing is like what I do with the Pokemon Go communities, I'm not out there to convert everyone that I'm encountering. I'm out there to play Pokemon Go, and I'm going to share my faith as well. So there's not this, I'm not pressuring anyone to stop and listen to me talk. I'm just being myself. And through that witness can draw people into that conversation and reflect and everything. And so people are way more receptive to that, especially after interacting with me, through a number of months, and know that I'm an approachable guy and they're willing to listen to me, but I'm not forcing it upon them.
Right.
You're not a Christian salesman. You're not out there to make sales and to gather leads. Christian is what I am. It's not what I do for a living, even though I think for all of us, that's sort of what we do for a living.
I do get paid for this, but
right.
It's my vocation, not my career.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing. But Christian is fundamentally just who we are, and we carry that with us where we go. To talk about the community aspect of it. I mean, again, I'm going to be the old man. But way back in the day, do you remember CompuServe? So,
oh yeah,
it was sort of it was like AOL but less graphical. So I was on CompuServe for ages back in the 90s, and there was a Mac gaming community there, and within the gaming community there was a flight sim club, and I was big into flight sims then. I even had the joysticks and the stuff, and there was we played this group, and we even had a virtual squadron, and people had call signs, we had patches, and it was this amazing opportunity to get to know people. For people, we got to know each other's lives. There was a retired F-4 Phantom pilot it was a Vietnam War era pilot. These were real connections with people that we were making, real people that we knew and that we could bond with in many ways. And I'd love to, that all kind of fell apart as CompuServe fell apart. So I don't know whatever happened to all these folks, but I would love to run into them someday.
They're probably still on IRC channels.
I know.
Connecting that way.
I know. But gaming is not just this lonely pursuit that it can be. I don't want to downplay that. It can be a sort of lonely, addictive pursuit that eats up your hours, but it can also be a very social thing as long as you keep it within the right bounds, the right priority within your life. So we've gone from these consoles, we've had PC gaming. Back in the day, I was huge into Marathon, which is a precursor to Halo.
Precursor to Halo,
yeah. I spent that's one where I spent too much time playing Marathon when I should have been studying for finals when I was at Steubenville. But then we got these dedicated portables like the Game Boy, but also like we have today, the Switch. And then we had smartphones, and smartphone gaming is big. Smartphone and tablet, I kind of lumped those together. And so now we're entering this new era where we have these casual games that you buy on an app store. So it's all delivered digitally. We download it, and then we have subscriptions and all this new stuff coming. We talked about some of these recently, but so we have Steam's been around for a while, and so you can buy a game, you can download it to your computer and play it on all your connected computers. But now we've got these new things coming as well, and so I just want to kind of talk about where you see gaming going from today into the future. Thomas, so let's start with you. Like, what do you think? Where are we going, and what should we expect from gaming? What we need to be concerned about, even?
I'm super excited about it. I think that I've been really concerned about the ownership of games a lot lately, and I think that some of the things that are coming out are really helping allay that fear, because games are becoming more and more of a collective thing and less of you own this individual copy of the game. And they're intended to be played together, like Pokemon Go or a lot of the other AR games that are coming out. And I like that concept. I like the concept that the game is about the experience, not so much about the game itself. And I'm looking forward to things like Stadia, Google's new system of kind of renting games, for lack of a better term, because I think it really captures the moment of where we're going, where it's not that you need to own a DRM-free copy of the game for yourself, but that you're going to be playing this game with other people. So you really should be able to, check into it as often as you need to, or as much as you can afford to, and play it that way.
Right, without worrying too much about, because apparently with Stadia, you're not going to need to worry about having a high-end gaming system and all these other things. Google claims that you'll be able, that 90% of the U.S. is going to have high enough speed internet to be able to play any game at the proper speed without having to have high-end hardware, which is one of the things that's kind of held some people back, is the technical demands. Now, 90% of the U.S. is a lot, but Father Andrew, I bet that you might have some concerns in that area with the ability to do cloud-based streaming up there in Wyoming.
Well, and I think that's my hesitation about Stadia is that, like I said, my parents finally got enough of a high-speed connection to even stream movies. And for the longest time when I was a kid growing up, we had dial-up. And then from there, we had the only option on the ranch was satellite-based internet, which inherently had a download limit and it had a lag time. And so I thought I could play Halo on that. You absolutely cannot play Halo on satellite. And so there's an initial resistance in me to that sort of gaming. I prefer the idea of a downloaded copy. So I think it has to go towards just everything is going towards this subscription-based sort of service. And I'm still not sure exactly how I feel about that. And maybe I feel a bit more like I own the game, or I want to own the game in a way that I don't want to own movies or TV shows. And I'm willing to pay a subscription for them versus I have all my save data for Pokemon Go. Sure, it's up in the cloud somewhere, but like I almost feel that I own it, and I don't want to necessarily pay for a subscription, because then what happens if you quit paying for it? Do I stop owning my little world that I've created? So I'm still kind of struggling, I think, with that whole concept in gaming. I can get it totally for TV and movies. not sure about gaming, and I sort of suspect I'm probably going to be more inclined towards the Apple Arcade downloadable games versus Google Stadia. And yeah, and I'm also just the type that I'm a bit of a brand loyalist, and so I'm going to always go back to the Nintendo and the Xbox, and until those things jump into Apple, which I know Nintendo has done a few things, but their main games are not available on any other platform. I'm probably going to stick with that and probably not initially spend money on Stadia or the Apple Arcade, but I don't know. I'll see where it goes come this fall, but I'll give it some time to mature before I necessarily spend any money on it.
How about you, Thomas? What do you think with this going here? You know, how do you feel about this movement in gaming toward subscriptions and less? Like you kind of said that getting past the having to own it is better, but there is this danger that if you don't own a disc that you can put into a machine, that if you're not constantly in one way feeding the arcade with quarters, like right. I used to do, that your ability to play the game goes away and all that money you spent is gone.
I've actually had experience with that. I am a recovering World of Warcraft addict, and so every once in a while I will be offered a deal, and I will take the deal, and I will go back, and my information will still be there. And there have been gaps of a couple of years at times where I'm just not playing. I'm not interested in paying for it, and I'm not playing it, and then I'll go back, and there I am, still all of the same characters that I had before. And the advantage there for the companies is that it doesn't cost them anything to save the data. They're going to house so much data anyway, and it's just a bunch of bits. It's maybe a few megabytes worth of information out of all of the storage space they possibly have. To be able to give that experience to the user when they come back, they don't have to start completely over again. That a lot of times I think it's worthwhile for them to just do that. And no, that's been my experience. Now it's been a couple of years since I've gone back to World of Warcraft, and a lot of things have changed. So I don't doubt that my data is probably no good anymore. But for the couple of times that I have, I've even at one point I quit for about a year and a half, and when I came back, I was still friends with a bunch of the people that were still playing, and they're like, "Oh, hey, you're back!" And they invited me to join them on all the stuff that they were doing, and they were ridiculously far ahead of me and everything, but it was neat to have those friends that I could reconnect with in that way.
Speaking of World of Warcraft, I happen to know a Catholic bishop who is a big World of Warcraft player, and in fact, his character
really?
is I'm not up on all the latest World of Warcraft, but a panda. Is a yeah. So his character is a panda. So I don't know if he still plays. He was playing before he was ordained a bishop, so maybe he doesn't have time for that anymore. But a lot of fun. As our generations rise up, we grew up gamers. We'll have bishops and someday a pope, perhaps, who used to play World of Warcraft as a kid or something. That'll be an interesting times we're going to live in.
What is your guys' opinion about the future in terms of AR versus VR?
Oh yeah, my thought about this is that VR for the short and medium term at least is going to be too bulky to really be the experience that people expect it to be. It's not going to be Ready Player One, and even Ready Player One sort of I mean because even if you have like a portable goggles, the VR goggles. You're not gonna be able to do the walking and the touching and the feeling and have that fully immersive experience, not for a long time to come. I mean, that's just so the tech for that is so far out. But even now in the short term, the goggles themselves. I mean, I love some of this. I'd love to try these. Was it Immersion Labs has the Star Wars VR, immersive VR where you're on Mustafar and it's blowing hot air in your face and all that sort of stuff. I'd love to go to one of those VR experiences, but I don't see that coming to really in the home at a consumer level anytime soon. But AR seems to be much more where even AR glasses where you don't have to recreate the world, you just overlay on the world that exists. I see that being much more possibility in that, and I think companies like Apple has clearly put its money on AR versus VR. So what do you think? What do you think about that?
I think that AR's been here, and I've been a huge proponent of AR for ages because it was the way forward. It was the only way that we were really going to make things reasonable. And I'm a total nerd, and so I've been to a couple of the VR experiences. My favorite was probably the Mech Warrior game that they had in arcades, and you got to actually sit in a Mech Warrior cockpit, and that thing rocked around while you were playing. It had switches all over the place. If you want to switch weapons, you had to reach up and flip a switch, and it was phenomenal.
I would love that
system. Yeah. And so, that's where VR is really going to work, is something like that. But AR is already here. And, I go back to the tabletop gaming all the time with this. We use AR at the tabletop games all the time, where we'll have projected maps, or we'll have, a person Skyping in to play with us, or the game master will have the whole player's handbook ready for them on an iPad, ready to use. So it's already something that we're doing. We're already doing augmented reality. We don't call it that because we don't, we're thinking of like visual representations in the real world, but we're not, that's not the limit of what AR is. AR also is all of this other stuff that we're doing that we would normally have had to have a whole library for. Now we just have, this one small device that can work. I don't even bring my books with me anymore. I just have my phone with the apps on it, and that's all I use for rules referencing, because it's faster, and it's more convenient. It's faster, so there's no way I wouldn't do it. And so yeah, AR is already here and really, really strong. And games like Pokemon Go are just the example of the really cool things we could do with it. And I think that we need to do more of those things. And I'm hoping that they're going to start getting more prevalent and a lot better. And I like the entry level for Pokemon Go. It's an easy game. It's something that's not hard to get into. It doesn't demand a lot of time. It doesn't demand a lot of effort. So it's something that you can invest in without having to be a really, really serious gamer.
There's grandmas and grandpas that are playing it with their grandchildren.
Yeah,
exactly. It's pretty awesome.
So great.
So, Father, what do you think for AR versus VR?
I think I would definitely totally agree with both of you that I think AR is definitely the more prevalent thing as we go forward. I'm incredibly tempted with VR, though, with the recent announcement of the Vader Immortal coming to the Oculus Quest, I think. So I'm unsure whether or not I'm going to just jump on board with that and get it. But still, I think there's problems with it and I think for me that the biggest problem would be the social interaction that I've watched people play VR. I was at a Comic-Con last month in Chicago, and they had a whole kind of lineup of computers and different video games to play, and so some of them were people with the headsets. And to be quite honest with you, it is not very fun at all to watch someone else play a VR game.
Right.
It looks goofy.
Right. And versus if you're going to join together and play an AR game together, everyone is participating. Everyone can share equally in that experience. And so from a social aspect, VR seems to me to be a lot more individual. And I need my own personal space and nobody else interacting with me as I'm, going to move around and use this VR headset versus AR, where I'm out in the community and joining up with other people and doing those sorts of things. So I definitely would echo what you guys have already said. I think AR is where it's at and where it's going. And I am very, very interested to see what Niantic does, the company that made Pokemon Go. They are investing heavily in this and are coming up with some pretty amazing things, and just using the new cameras on the Androids and the iPhones and being able to project these virtual monsters on a physical space and lock them into a physical space is pretty impressive. So I think there's a lot of that's where the potential is. That's where everything is currently going.
Yeah, if Pokemon Go is big, wait till they come out with the Harry Potter game.
Right.
That's people
Right.
gonna
Which
go
I'm-
nuts for
yeah,
that.
I'm into
It
as
is
well.
on its
So
way.
Yeah.
it's being
So-
beta tested in New Zealand right now. So
Oh
Yeah.
boy,
it's coming.
Harry Potter in Middle Earth. That just seems. Anyway, so let's we'll be coming back to the topic of gaming for sure. I mean, we're all a bunch of gamers here, so that's definitely on the topic in the future. That's for sure. So let's move on to our picks of the week, our final segment. And Thomas, I'm going to give you the first pick. What is it you're picking this week?
All right, so since we were going so heavily game themed, I decided I wanted to go with like the most indie game there possibly is. It has a production company of one. It is a game called Dwarf Fortress. It's made by this guy named Charn Adams, and it is the most brutal roguelike game you will play. The running joke is that you're not really playing it unless you have fun with an exclamation point. And by fun, they mean terrible things happening in the game. The entire purpose is to lose as spectacularly as you can. So the principle of it is that you start off with a group of 7 dwarfs, and you have to create a colony for these dwarfs to live in and make life work. And that's it. That's all you know. And there's no tutorial. There's no here's how you do things. Nothing. You just have to learn the game kind of as you go. And you fail 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 and you just keep failing until you learn the next thing that's going to make you live. And then something comes in and kills you. and it just keeps happening over and over again. And you go to read the website naturally. You go to read like the wiki that they have and everything. But the wiki has spoilers in it where it's like, don't read past this point if you don't want to ruin parts of the game for yourself. And so then you'll go and you'll do whatever it was saying to do, and then you'll fail miserably. You'll be like, what did I do wrong? You go back and read the spoiler, and it's like, oh, that was supposed to happen. I just didn't realize it. But it's really a great game. It used to be just an ASCII game where you had little characters moving around on the screen, but it was recently just released on Steam with a graphics pack. Tarn's been having some issues in his family life that he needed to get a little bit more income for it. And so he decided to partner with a company, and they've released it on Steam. I definitely recommend it, but it is not for anyone who would like a casual gaming experience that isn't going to frustrate the heck out of you.
Interesting. I'm a big fan of Civilization series, so that sort of simulation game. So that might be something I'm interested, but I have to weigh whether I want to get deep into a game like that.
Give it a shot though. It's really cool because you don't control the dwarves. You just kind of give them a general idea of what to do, and then their AI takes over. And the decisions that they make sometimes that you really it boggles the mind. And they like, just for example, they give birth every once in a while. You'll have one dwarf that gets pregnant. She'll give birth. She'll be in the middle of working on something, and she'll just strap the baby to her back and keep going, or she'll lose the baby and stop whatever she was doing to try and find the baby. And that can be devastating at times if she's like carrying a really important item and she just drops it wherever it is, and then it rolls down the stairs and you've lost it permanently.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'll have to check that out. Interesting. Thank you. Father Andrew, what's your pick this week?
So my pick is also a more or less version of a game. The recommendation, the pick is a company called Six to Start. They're an indie game developer based out of London, and so they are the creators of an app called Zombies Run. And so a lot of people may have heard that it was a Kickstarter project originally. But what it is it's a game that you download on your phone, and then you can go for a run with it or go for a walk with it. But what it does is it narrates a story to you as if you are part of the story. So it is incredibly immersive, and they have such ingenious storytelling methods to refer to you as Runner 5 and keep you involved in the conversation. And they basically tell the story to you as they're talking to each other. And so you're part of, surviving the zombie apocalypse, and you're going on these missions where you have to go run and save people. And it is just incredibly fun. And I have used it as a way in my own training because I've run a number of half marathons. And so it's been part of the reason why I enjoy running a little bit more than maybe I would have otherwise. And so it's it's a really fun way to use it to get in shape or even just go for a walk. But one of the other really cool things that they have done is they've also developed virtual races. And so they've developed another app called RaceLink. And so that RaceLink app will host other virtual races. And so they are genuine 5Ks or 10Ks with different themes. For example, one of them, you run through the solar system. One, you run to the tallest mountain on Mars. One, you escape a volcanic eruption. And so again, it like narrates to you the story as you go through it. But what's phenomenal about these particular things is that the narration comes to you at specific distance intervals. So it's using your own phone's GPS system to figure out if you've run half a kilometer and then the next incoming transmission happens. And so when you're done with this virtual race, the app will actually record your time and submit it to an online leaderboard where you can see where you rank with all the other people from throughout the entire world. So it's very much an augmented reality game, but it's also just a fun way to get out there and get walking, or get out there and get running and get in better shape physically as well. So that would be my pick of the week, and I think it's absolutely fun.
Well, my pick is a family product. You've probably heard of it, but in case you haven't, it's the Tile app series of products, and they have several different tiles. And these are stuff trackers. So we all know about Find My Phone, which is Apple has it on the iPhone and the iPad, where if you leave your phone somewhere, you can look it up in an app or a web page, and it'll tell you where your phone is. And we have Find My Friends, where we could find the people in our lives, that sort of thing. And I lose a lot more things than just my phone. I'm constantly losing things. And so the Tile system, and there are a couple other products like it, but Tile's the one I connected to, and I think it's the biggest one. They have a series of different, these little, very thin, very small, like 1 inch square, couple inch square, maybe a quarter inch thick on some of them, and the slim is even thinner, that are trackers that you have an app on your phone, you're looking for your car keys, and it has the tile on it, and you hit the button, and you'll hear it beeping, and it will lead you to it. Now, it won't show it. It'll show it on a map if it's out of the house, and that's a separate thing. I'll address in a second. But it'll beep it, and you'll follow it around, and you're getting closer, and you get to it, and there it is, and you found your keys. I have one in my Kindle because Amazon has not yet put a Find My Kindle feature in their Kindles. Why have you not done this yet, Amazon? We need to. There are 3 Kindles in my house, mine, my wife's, and my daughter's, and we're all constantly going, have you seen my Kindle? Have you seen my Kindle? I don't do this anymore because I have a tracker on my Kindle, and I put one in my daughter's as well. So I have one in my wallet. They have the slim, is very thin, and it slides right in my wallet. I have one attached to my backpack, my hiking backpack. And one of the things it does is, because it's Bluetooth, when you install the app on your phone, you allow them, with your personal information stripped out, allow them to track all the tiles it sees within range and send that location data to them. But your information is stripped out, so they're not tracking you per se. But it says that if I drop my keys somewhere, say in the city of Boston, some other tile user will walk by it, and it will ping their phone, and the phone will say, hey, I saw this tile in this location. So when I'm looking for it, it'll say, oh, your tile was seen at this place in Boston. So it's really great. They last, most of them are the single-use battery, which lasts about a year. And they have a deal where you can replace them for pretty cheap. They also have one that's a little more expensive, but it has a replaceable watch-style battery in it. So that's a little bit of a better deal. So I've been using them. Now, I have to say, I've seen rumors that Apple is going to be coming out with its own type of device like this that has even more functionality. So if you're an Apple user and you want to wait, Lord knows it might be another AirPower and never come out. but if you want something now, this might be the thing for you. I've got a whole bunch of them. I've had them for more than a year, so I've reached that point where I'm starting to replace them. The replacement is really easy. It's a real helpful tool. And what I've done is I've used the service called camelcamelcamel.com it's a price watching service for Amazon. So I put the tile products that are on Amazon in Camel 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 and say when they fall below this price, because Amazon's prices are always changing. It's that algorithm again. Let me know, and then I pick another one up from them and put it on yet another thing. My keys, my wife's keys, my wallet, my bag. I have several bags now with it in it. So I want to recommend. So it's a TileMate. They have the TileMate Pro and Slim. Those are the trackers. So we'll have links to all of those in the show notes today. So that's it from us. We've kind of run through our time. Before we finish, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of technology. Today, we're thanking by name Anusha M, Nate F, Mardell B, Felix L, and Claudia S. Through their generous donations at sqpn.com/give. They make it possible for us to continue the secrets of technology in all the shows we do at StarQuest. You could join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What did you think of our discussion of the evolution of gaming, our discussion of the recommendation bubble, or any of our picks? Let us know by visiting sqpn.com/technology or the SQPN Facebook page, which is facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Leave us some feedback there, or you can send us an email to technology@sqpn.com. And you'll find all the relevant links from our discussion on our show notes at sqpn.com. And if you have not yet done so, if you're listening to this, say, on our website or something like that, be sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes, in Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or on YouTube, where you could hit the bell to get notifications. Until next time, Thomas and Herho, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of technology.
Thanks for having me.
Father Andrew Kinstetter, thank you as well.
Absolutely.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.